Lord Chris Holmes, welcome to Trade Finance Talks.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. Here we are at the ITFA and BCR Trade and Investment Forum here in London. And following on from your keynote speech, you said, why is trade finance cool? Why do you think trade finance is cool?
Trade finance is cool, and I hope everybody understands that. It's cool because it enables potential, sure, economic potential, but social, individual, community, city, country, global potential is enabled through trade finance. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. We all agree on trade finance talks. So how do we get rid of the paper? I was going to say the $1 million question, it's probably a $1 trillion question. And how do we move towards digitising trade?
One of the biggest problems that everybody will be painfully aware of is trade is so currently disappointingly and pervasively papery. That comes of all kinds of difficulties in terms of inefficiencies, in terms of environmental impact, and it's why we need the digitised trade. It's why we need electronic trade documents to be brought into being. Not straightforward, not simple, but we have a plan to make that happen, and the difference will be in terms of continuation of that cool point, unlocking billions into the trillions of potential for everybody.
Thank you, Lord Holmes. And I think a lot of that is centred around what you call the most important bill that no one's heard of. Can you talk to us about the Electronic Trade Documents Bill?
The Electronic Trade Documents Bill is for sure the most important bill no one has ever heard of, apart from all the people who've already appreciated that trade finance is cool. And it's important because it does exactly what it says. It's an incredibly succinct, it's incredibly simple, but it's an incredibly powerful bill because it will enable trade documents to be held and transacted in electronic format. Hasn't been possible thus far for want of the technology, for want of addressing the issues around possessibility, and for want of the will from governments and others in the ecosystem to bring this into being.
Thank you, Lord Holmes. And why is this possessibility such an important term in relation to the bill?
In terms of the legal elements of the Electronic Trade Documents Bill, possession is really 9/10 of the law, because in the model law on electronic trade records, we have exclusive control. So many people say, well, why in the UK didn't we just bring in exclusive control, end of, job done? We have an even better opportunity through the common law principle of possession, which means that all those centuries of English law precedent can be brought to bear for the benefit of electronic trade documents. And the great thing is we have all the benefits of those centuries of English law precedent put together with the fact that possession and exclusive control in terms of functional effect are pretty much interchangeable. So in reality, it's not a lesser or a silver medal, if you will, that we've gone for possession. It's actually plus for the UK and plus for other nations who we will trade with electronic trade documents.
Thank you, Lord Holmes. And your work has been instrumental in enabling the enactment of this law. Where does it sit in terms of, where do we sit in terms of timelines, whether it's in the House of Lords, in the House of Commons, and when can we actually see the bill being enacted into Parliament and into common law?
This bill has been of great interest to me since way before it entered Parliament, since the work began on it years ago, because my interests in Parliament and indeed before entering Parliament have always been around talent and technology, how we can use these new technologies, these 4IR technologies, however we choose to describe them, for public good, for private good, for common good. And the Electronic Trade Documents Bill is as much a technology bill as it is a trade bill, because it enables trade through the deployment of these new technologies tied together with the talent and the great good fortune of English law. So we've gone through many stages of the bill in the House of Lords. I was incredibly fortunate to be on the Special Bill Committee, where we go into great detail, comma by full stop by letter analysis of the bill. 3 weeks of evidence sessions, bringing in experts from law, from commerce, from every element of the trading ecosystem to make the bill as sharp and on point as possible. We have one final stage, third reading in the House of Lords, which should be a formality. It then goes to the House of Commons, and because of the work that we've done, the detailed work we've done with a Special Bill Committee in the Lords, it should go through the Commons relatively speedily, and we should have it enacted on the statute book spring this year.
What an exciting spring for the trade finance community. Now, the bill is permissive, so how do we actually enable it gets taken up by the community?
The Electronic Trade Documents Bill is rightly permissive rather than mandatory. That's a good thing, but what it means is that once we have the bill enacted, that's when the second phase of work really begins. And I'll be leading work on two fronts, both in the UK in terms of working with trade finance folk, bankers, insurers, everybody who is in this trade ecosystem, to communicate, to connect them to the opportunity that this then act will present to them, to enable them to connect, to feel the confidence to use the provisions within the legislation. The second piece, equally important, is to connect with key jurisdictions right around the world, key jurisdictions in the EU, across the Commonwealth, and not least our great friends in Japan and across Southeast Asia, to help, to enable, to support their legislatures to bring in similar acts so we can have electronic trade enabled right across the planet. Because in simple terms, there's only minor benefit in us passing the Electronic Trade Documents Bill, if you will. We don't have similar country counterparts to electronically trade documents with.
Thank you very much, Lord Holmes. And final question, because once upon a time you were, and you still are, a multi-gold Olympic medal holder. How did you get into trade? And you know, in Trade Finance Talks, we have a lot of young and aspirational leaders emerging into the market. What's your word of advice for those entering the trade finance world, especially given last week, International Women's Day, etc.?
I was so incredibly fortunate to have 15 years travelling around the globe competing for my country, and luckily winning a few gold, silver and a bronze medal. So it's always good to keep an eye on the gold price, what's happening with that. But to have begun that journey aged 15, to have had that international perspective so fabulously, so fortunately early in my life. I've always operated and looked at things from an international perspective. So international trade and technology has always been an interesting place for me to operate, to bring about that potential, to enable, to empower, to unleash economic, social, individual potential. And to any young people out there thinking of a career in international trade, in technology, I'd simply say this: the opportunities are as good as infinite. Constantly as you progress, it will continue to open more doors than not, and you can plot your own path. And crucially, more than anything else, dream your dreams, make them a reality in the daylight, and never, never let anybody tell you that you can't.
Lord Holmes, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on Trade Finance Talks TV.
Real pleasure. Thank you so much.